Yes, people. Good to see you all here today. Peter, good to see you. John, long time. Good to see you. Mwah. Back again, Natalie here with Rich. Only One United. You know it's that. Listen, I'm a bit bunged up with a cold. Not even a cold, hay fever. But listen, don't stop us. Rich, thanks for coming on. How you doing?
No
How's
worries.
it been?
Yeah, good. Busy as I am. It's been a little bit quieter because obviously our season at Chef's finished. So yeah, I've been able to do a bit of WSL. Obviously went to the derby on Sunday, and I think I'm going to Man City on Saturday, but I don't know yet for definite. Yeah, so it's been good. And then obviously next week it basically switches straight to England with the squad announcement. So yeah, never stops.
Yeah, Man City, your favourite team. Yeah, you go in there. You're not going to come to Liverpool down the road.
I think if Chelsea had slipped up, I would have been at Liverpool, but I think I think Man City missing out on the Champions League is more of a story. United have confirmed second, and no doubt Reading will probably go and beat Chelsea now, and I won't be at Liverpool. But there you go. You got to pick and choose.
Hi everyone. Listen, let's get straight into it. And then that derby. I think I was on podcast saying Man United are going to win 4-1. I said Bunny will definitely score, but I knew City would definitely score. And I think when Haley Ladd put that ball in the back of the net, I was like, right, that's it now. Come on, let me see my goals. I was slightly disappointed that they didn't score more goals in the first half. They didn't take advantage of the 10 players they were playing with. But I think that's the sort of problem that we need to work on, really. I mean, I'm sure they will. And obviously, this is a transfer show, guys, so we will be talking about the players that we're linked to and the deals that we've heard are done. But listen, like I said, I was slightly disappointed, Rich, that they did pull it back to 1-1, and then obviously my girls they came on together and they did their business, so we're happy. But yeah, like Vicky says, we don't know how to play against 10. That was slightly disappointing. What was your view on the game?
I thought it was a really good game for a starter. Yeah, I thought United started really well. Like even beside the goal, I thought they just started with better intentions. They were pressing high. The first goal came from two really good presses, one on Hasegawa, then the other on Angadal on the edge of the box, which obviously was the directly led to the goal. Yeah, I mean, look, you're going to have spells in those kind of games where both teams dominate because they're both obviously very good teams, and City's attack, their front three is their strength, and I thought United won the midfield for the majority. I think that's probably City's weak. I hate saying weak area because they're good players, but probably their weakest area. Um, but yeah, it's interesting when you go down to 10 players because, and we've seen it a lot in the past WSL, Premier League, anything. It's actually like people always expect you to dominate. It doesn't always happen like that because the other team comes out. Suddenly, there's no real pressure on them. They change their system. The other team has to kind of adapt, against everything they've planned for, kind of goes out the window, and the pressure's on them. So, yeah, City came out and had a real go, and they probably deserved the goal. I mean, it was obviously a fluke in terms of how it came about, but yeah, I loved the last 10, 15 minutes. I mean, United were wasteful in terms of maybe not outright chances, but they were wasteful with counter attacks. Like there was a few times they had 2-on-1, 3-on-1, and the touch was off or the pass was off, and I don't think they really made Kara Keating make many saves. There was one from the edge of the box from Bo Risa, and then Garcia sort of hit the rebound against her own leg, and City went down the other end, and Haley Razzo missed a sitter, and obviously Letitia made the block on Bunny Shaw, and then yeah, and it always felt like there was going to be a winner because it was so stretched. Like City knew they kind of had to go for it to have any chance of the Champions League. United had to go for it to have any chance of winning the league. So it became so stretched, and probably tactically, neither manager would be thrilled by that. But it made for a really entertaining last sort of 10, 15 minutes, and I think probably a draw would have been fair, but I think either team could have nicked it, and United did obviously what they've done so often, and yeah, got the late goal.
Yeah, Vix is saying mentality shifted. Need to bolster the squad, and we're going to get onto the names. Don't worry, like stick with us. Made the game easy. John, don't worry, but Peter's saying it. We just know the importance of winning it going into the final day. And I saw your comments with some of them saying about the crowd, and I was talking to a City fan about it, but I just think that was it, mate. That's what won it, the game. I think they've even talked about it a lot. That crowd from the minute one, getting on the back, I think that was a big reason why Robot got sent off. I think we were in ahead from minute one. I just think, even Corey Kelly turned around and kissed the badge, and then at the end, he wasn't kissing nothing, and I just think we knew the importance. We wanted to win it. Our fans are there doing it, and I just think it's a factor. It's a factor now, isn't it, in women's football? I mean, we've always said it's a factor, but I just think like a full all four at the end, all four stands full, it makes a difference, doesn't it?
I think it was definitely a good case for big games being in the smaller stadiums if you can fill them up, because the atmosphere, like I said again, in that last sort of 10, 15 minutes when it was really end to end, both teams were going for it like it was. There's nothing that gets a crowd up more than a counter attack in the last 10 minutes, and both teams were having them like every couple of minutes. So, and yeah, look, if you put that, what was it, 7,800 in Old Trafford, it's amazing because it's the same amount of people, but the atmosphere would have been absolutely nowhere near the same. So, yeah, I think there's still nothing wrong with the odd big game, like in big stadiums. I think we should encourage that. But I actually think that was a really good example of why these kind of games still work in your LSVs,
Yeah,
because it was a very good atmosphere.
yeah, definitely. Right, I'm gonna mix up the show a bit, Rich, because I've got the people here and they're all watching and they're all waiting. I'm gonna get into it. Transfers. Lanzel's talking about Vilda and Garcia being Champions League players. And I just want to say hi to Twambe Philip. I don't even know if I said you, but thank you so much for joining. Thank you so much for subscribing. Even you're getting a little shout out here. But saying he needs to rotate players, Mark needs to rotate players. It was promised the Champions League, and you know, what, what's your view, I suppose, about the Champions League now? We're there, we're second. We know we have to do that qualifying round. Talked about our midfielder being better. Lanzel's dropped them two names. I mean, I've heard a Martin Lopez is done to Man United. Listen, that's my sources. That's what I'm saying. Rich isn't saying that. Graham Black sort of made reference to it. Very strong reports in Spain. Not much, I suppose, over here. I mean, do you think that will be a person? We've got Lisa Nelson there. Like Mark was saying, bringing he has to rotate. He promised he would do it. And, players like we're talking, Lisa, Vilda, now Martine, if I've said her name right, Garcia. I mean, do you think that's a play? First of all, on her, do you think she's a player will add? And do you expect to see Mark now, move beyond just the 13 players that he plays and having to play more players?
I think she was definitely a target in the past, when Casey was the head coach, and obviously there's a lot of staff still there, like Martin Ho, etc., that are heavily involved in recruitment. Anybody that read my interview with him, he said the whole staff are involved in how they recruit. So I'm sure they probably looked at that profile again. It's an interesting one because they do have quite a few midfielders. I think Spanish midfielders obviously always bring a slightly different dynamic to a team in terms of their style. And obviously, we've still not really seen much of Lisa Nelson just because of the injury. Um, I think on the rotation thing, it's interesting because that was probably the first time the other night when I asked him about what the squad was going to look like next season, that he kind of admitted that he would have to rotate more, and also admitted that he hasn't done it this year, but also said that he hadn't needed to because obviously the team has largely been winning, and obviously without the Champions League, they've not had um, as many games. I think the Champions League thing is really interesting because the new system is a bit divisive in terms of how it works. Like I don't think clubs are overly like, look, it works both ways, isn't it? If you're winning, you probably don't mind it. If you're losing, it's tough, but you're losing good teams in the qualifying rounds. I mean, it's adding competitiveness. To have Man City playing Real Madrid. I mean, I think that was a first round qualifying game last season, let alone second round. So, but you are losing good teams, before the group stages. It does make it hard for teams that are going in brand new, like United, that don't have the coefficient, that will be unseeded, because you're going in with PSG, you're going in with Wolfsburg, you're going in with Real Madrid, and slightly, well, I mean, PSG and Wolfsburg's I mean, Wolfsburg are in the Champions League final, so unless obviously they win that final next week, but it's massively difficult unless you get a little bit fortunate in who you draw, or they have an off day. Obviously, you're going to have the scenario of players coming back from the World Cup, but the second round, I don't actually think the second round's till October this year. I think the schedule has completely changed with the World Cup, so it's an interesting one because the transfer window shuts in September, so players won't actually know whether Man United are going to be in the group stage when they join, which is a interesting sort of parallel, because players may join and think, okay, look, I can help get United there, because I think they will have to be stronger than they are now to take on PSG, to take on Wolfsburg, Real Madrid over two legs. So I think the whole. I don't know whether the lure of the group stage will be what sways players, because there's no guarantee United are going to be in it, but I think it'll be more that they've shown they can now compete at that level. They're ahead of Arsenal, they're ahead of City. They haven't lost to either of them this season. They've won 3 of the 4 games against those two sides. They're the team that have taken Chelsea to the last day. They're the team that took Chelsea on in the FA Cup final. And I think that's what players look at as much as anything, that you want to look at a team and go, they're going in the right direction. We sat last season, talked about United season and talked about what they needed to do this season, and they've probably exceeded what most probably thought they might do in terms of, let's just get top 3 if we get a cup final as well. They've not just got that, they've got second with a game to go and got the cup final as well. So I think players, Mark said it himself, they're talking to good players, they want to sign good players, and he thinks that good players will be intrigued by United's project. They have to put the money up, of course they do, and that's been an issue in the past. So I think the Champions League as a concept maybe isn't the lure in terms of not knowing whether they'll actually be in it, but I think more United's progress will be what players potentially look at.
That's what it's about, yeah. People want to play there. They want to play at Old Trafford. They want to play in front of our crowd. They want to play with our fans. They want to, like you say, compete, be in the top of the WSL. WSL's the best league. And like you say, for me, it's just that last bit that you said, the money, the investment. Are Man United willing to put it up? I can see a lot of honour questions, and I'm going to come on to honour, but I suppose I just want to flip it back, Rich, to the reason why we're doing this pod. I think as well, you know it, I know it. People like me and you, we do this pod, and a lot of people, will criticise WOSO journalists or will criticise people writing about transfers, and just talk to us about sort of your views on people that are being very critical about journalists, about sort of, doing these stories, how difficult it can be, and these kind of things, because I know you're sort of, you go on Twitter and if you type in WOSO journalist, it's usually slurs, isn't it? And just talk to us about that, I suppose, and how
I haven't
difficult.
actually tried that. I haven't actually tried it. I think it's probably best that I don't. But yeah, it's obviously off the back of last week. Obviously, the question in Jonas Eidval's press conference, where I saw people even that I follow, popping up saying "Woso media this, Woso journalist that," and it sort of makes me chuckle a little bit. I can laugh it off, but it is a little bit annoying when you sort of get tagged in things like that, where it's a guy that no one's ever actually seen before that works for Sky, that's probably just been sent because there was a few other people not available or elsewhere, and apparently that's a Woso media problem. But yeah, it is what it is from that sense. I think there's a lot going on now at the moment in terms of the media and the clubs, because and this, we've talked about this before, like, we have our associations now, we're all part of the Football Writers Association. We have a sort of separate women's group within that, where we were constantly, those of us that are sort of the main women's football writers, we're constantly talking to the clubs, we're constantly talking to the FA about wanting more, what we can do. because it is frustrating because we see a lot of people and people messages saying we're not doing enough or we don't care or the papers don't care that the coverage isn't enough and like the national newspaper thing is one that was quite stark for me because I think everybody knows obviously print media is struggling a little bit, financially. And I kind of thought off the back of the Euros, I was like, okay, there might be a bit more like scope now in terms of people writing about women's football, and it's kind of gone the other way. I know there's a lot of papers, and I won't name them, but there's certain papers that are only even sending one person to Australia, which is it's not a lot, to ask one person to do that, to be in Australia for 5 weeks and cover a World Cup, and it's because they can't afford it. They don't have the money. The women's coverage isn't bringing in the money that obviously the men's coverage does. So, I see people all the time saying we want more of this, we want more, stuff that's not the top four or stuff that's not the Lionesses. We want non-league stuff, we want tactical stuff, and it's not the stuff that's being read. The stuff that's being read is the Lionesses, it is the top four, and that's why papers are commissioning it because that's what's making them money. Um, so it's a difficult one because it works both ways in terms of the papers and the media and everyone and all of us could and should do more, but I think as well it is tough. Like and look, my call it, everyone works so hard to cover the game, and you see a lot of people saying they want more, but they can only be in one place at once. You take the weekend for example. Of course, everyone's going to be at Chelsea via Arsenal, and everyone's going to be at United versus City, but there was nobody that was at both. The southern writers were at Chelsea Arsenal, the northern writers were at United City, and there's nobody else to go to the other ones. And it's difficult because some are even now doing the men's game. Molly's doing Premier League, and I was delighted that Catherine and Emma and Charlotte, they got to go out to Qatar and cover the men's World Cup for their outlets. But then you get people saying, well, where's all the athletics WSL coverage? And I'm like, well, they've sent their women's writer out to Qatar. Like, people will be saying in the summer, where's the WSL coverage? Where's the transfer coverage? But, when everyone's out in Australia for 5 weeks and they're the only people working for that newspaper, like, what can they do? So it's frustrating a little bit to see that because I know how hard everyone works and I know how hard we work as a group every day to actually fight for more coverage from the clubs, from the FA, from whoever, and most of the time we have our backs to the wall in terms of that because some of the clubs in England, and we've said this before, are not the easiest to work with for whatever reason. I find clubs, and not everyone, there are some in the WSL that are really good to work with and very helpful, but clubs abroad generally have been easier for me to work with. Clubs around Europe, clubs in NWSL, and yeah, it's just a constant sort of ongoing fight. But I never want people to think that we're not fighting for more, that we don't want to do more. Like every single person would love to be able to do more women's football coverage, but if the money isn't there to back it, and people are not reading it, then it's probably going to go the other way for the time being.
No, 100%, and I get it. And I think that's why, in a way, I suppose I would always try and push you, push Emma, push Graham even coming out and doing more. I think we should always support the people. Jamie, get you guys on here because even if, say, for example, you can't post it or whatever, your national media aren't doing it, there are people here that are waiting, that are wanting. And I mean, guys, listen, I've been seeing a lot of this comment and I'm going to get into it now. And I hope you don't mind, Rich, we're sweeping it back. But this is what we need. And then when we do these shows, we need you guys to support these shows to show that people want this information. I think that's what I suppose we started all this YouTube for, to show the drive and the commitment to stories like this, I suppose. And I think this us as fans are the ones who have pushed this the most in terms of getting transfers out there, getting the news out there. But this one, world class. Let's not even, there's no debate, tactical, this and that, the best in the world. Yeah, we've all heard that Ashley Lawrence is going to Chelsea. I think that plays into our favour. I'm seeing people saying we're not far away from Chelsea. I agree in a way, but we need to drop the money now. We need the big deals to come through. And for me, there's nothing bigger than this one now. I know we want Russo to stay. I want Russo to stay. I mean, I suppose between them both, Rich, where do you think? I mean, I think they both could stay. I know that sounds a bit optimistic. I've heard a lot of positives on the Honor side, a lot of positives on the Honor side, more than on the Russo side. But I've still been hearing a lot of positives on the Russo side. I think we know. Well, what I've heard is that it's come out today. So Guru put it out, but I've heard that Angel City want Lessie. We know Barca want Honor, and then I think that's their main choices. I don't know about Arsenal for Russo again. I don't know if you know more, Rich, but I do think that. I mean, even people are saying now Honor over Russo, not in a horrible way. We love Russo. You know, she's bought. We could. Honor is irreplaceable for me. I know Mark came out and said what he said. No players irreplaceable. Yeah, of course they're not, but she's the best in the world. And this is Man United. We want the best players in the world playing here, you know. And I think the fact that Alessia, she's still got a lot to do. You know, I don't think she's world. I think she has the potential. She will be, but she is not at Honour's level right at this moment in time. I could not name you a better right back. I could not name you a better left back than Honour. That's how good Honour is. You know, look how many assists she's got. For few. I just think it's Honour, and I'm hearing positive things. So, Rich, what do you think? What do you know?
I think they're both really interesting cases. I think I agree with you on Russo in terms of she's a really strange one because, as you know, Nat, I'm a massive fan of her, and when Man United signed her, I thought it was a great signing, and it has been a great signing. But I think with Russo, it's more about her overall game and the attributes that she has rather than maybe the goals that she will score as a striker. I think as an English player, she's very unique in her style. She's very physical. She's very stocky. She's very tall. You know, she's not like the sort of typical European English style players that you see come through. Maybe like your Lauren Hemps, your Ella Toons, your Frank Kirby's, like that are a bit, you know, the smaller, niftier, technical players, and I think that plays into United's hands in terms of it's a different kind of style. But you know, she's got 10 goals this season in the league, and I think for a team like United that, you know, for most of the season were the top scorers, I think you have to be doing a bit more than that. You know, when you look at what Rachel Daly has, Khadija Shaw, even Beth England, you know, in a relegation threatened team, and she's only been there since January, and you know she's above Russo now. So I think if you lost her, you lose a lot of qualities. But I think if United can't find a striker to at least replicate 10 goals in the WSL, that's a failure in this summer's recruitment, whether Russo stays or goes. Yeah, I mean, it's interesting in terms of what you hear because, and I said this to you off record before we started the show, like a lot of it, it's hard to separate what is actual fact with what is conjecture because, like you say, you get some people that say, yeah, I think she's going to stay. And you're like, yeah, but okay, but based on what? Like, what, because she's a United fan or you know, and then like you say, you get people saying, "Oh, she's going to go to Arsenal," and you're like, "Okay, yeah, but is that based on anything? Is that based on just that they bid for her in January? Because it's a completely different scenario now. Bidding doesn't matter. It's open warfare. You know, in terms of who can sign her. She's a free agent if she decides to go. So, and it's same with Badger. I think, yeah, I think Chelsea obviously moving on and signing Ashley Lawrence, which they're going to do, is I think probably recognition as well that I think if Badger does leave Man United, it will only ever be for one club. That club obviously has Lucy Bronze until 2024 in terms of a contract. Not that that would probably stop them. I think it's interesting. I think again, like you say, people talk to you, and I talked to someone this week who said to me, "Oh, you know, yeah, Badger would probably go Barcelona," and you're like, "Yeah, but okay, but based on what? Because people, that's what people expect to happen. It's almost a reaction of everyone sort of just thinks she'd go Barcelona, but nothing concrete is actually out there to suggest that at the moment. That can change, obviously. You know, I think he was probably telling the truth when he said they're still in negotiations with both of them. I don't think anything has been sort of signed, sealed, delivered either way. I think it will be soon with the season ending. But yeah, there's definitely nothing concrete sort of out there in terms of what's happening. And you know, Reese made a good point the last time we did this podcast that you know foreign clubs can negotiate with players, 4 or 5 months in advance for players that are out of contracts, and still nothing has been sort of confirmed. So, yeah, I mean, like you say, you hear various things. You hear some people saying, yeah, she's going to stay. You hear some people saying, yeah, she's going to go. But I think a lot of it is conjecture, and obviously the job is to get down to the truth. Some transfers, it's easier to do that than others because some are done very early, like Chelsea. Chelsea have done their business very early. Obviously, they signed Nicky Everard and Maka Hamano in January. They've signed Shoka Nuskin. They're going to sign Ashley Lawrence, and Chelsea are in that privileged position where they can sort of kind of go and do what they want to do because of the stature that they've got themselves now as one of the best teams in the world, the team that wins most of the domestic trophies, the place where players want to go, and also because of the squad that they have, they don't actually need to do much. They don't have much to add to what they already have. They've obviously replaced Pernille Harder with Macario. Whether they replace Ericsson or just bring Newman back from AC Milan and obviously have Nuskin as an option there as well, I don't know. They've got their backup goalkeeper, and that's what the best teams can do, and that's what United want to do. But United are playing catch up to Chelsea, and that's the problem. That's the problem. You're always playing catch up. You're always going to be playing catch up to the team that can go and sign Macario and sign Lawrence and sign Hamano and sign Nuskin, and United and City and Arsenal have to find ways to sort of circumnavigate that with their recruitment and buy the best that they can get, and aiding your budget will help that, and United need to do that. They need to invest more. They need to invest more in the playing budget, and Mark intimated that he thinks that will happen. Because at the end of the day, look, players are loyal, and players, I know Badger has enjoyed playing in Manchester United, but if they can go and get more money elsewhere and win trophies elsewhere, then you're not giving them a decision to make. So I think United need to 100% show they're serious because, like Mark said, whatever people think of him or the team, they've done the job that they needed to do on the pitch. They've got to the Champions League. They've taken that next step, and now it's on the club to help give them a squad that can go and compete, whether that's new contracts or bringing new players in from elsewhere. And there are, I've spoken to people who have said they think Man United will be very active in this transfer window.
So you're talking about recruitment, you're talking about investment. This is something that we know isn't going to happen with the current ownership. It's clear, Are they waiting for this, Rich? Do you think this is what's holding it up? I mean, I was listening to a podcast the other day that was saying, oh, surely not. Surely they've got enough money to do this and that. But then when you're hearing, the Glazers are spending $500,000 on private jets and, like you say, the women's team is a budget of similar to Villa can catch it up quicker than we can catch up Chelsea. What do you think it is that they think this is going to have a big impact, the takeover? Because they're not going to invest. They might get a bit more because it is Champions League, but the real investment that we want isn't going to happen under this ownership. So, is that what they're waiting for? Do you reckon?
I don't know if it's what they're waiting for. I mean, it never helps, and I can sort of relate to that, obviously, because it's a similar situation at the minute at Sheffield United. But football goes on at the end of the day. You have to make your decisions and set your budgets, by a certain time in terms of what you're going to do for next season. Those budgets are generally set quite far in advance. So I don't think it'll massively affect what they do. I don't think a new owner's suddenly going to come in and say, okay, your budget changes. I think United will already be well on their way to know who they want to sign, what money they have to do that with, because that you can't just set that at a week's notice. The club have to plan months and months in advance. Who they're going to sign this summer or who they want to sign this summer. So, and look, the sums of money that you're talking about, we're talking about more investment, yes, but the sums of money that for a club like Man United to put into the women's team is peanuts compared to obviously on the men's side. So I think naturally, look, your budget, if you're a club like that, your budget needs to be going up every year, even if it's only a little bit. So I don't think they're waiting on the takeover to go through. I think a lot of this summer will be set in stone. That may then affect maybe what you can do in January or what you can do next year, pending obviously the takeover. But I think whatever happens this summer probably isn't 100% related to. It will have an effect, of course. There's always that little bit of uncertainty, but I don't think it'll have a massive effect on what they do this summer. I think inside United, I think Mark, Martin, everybody else, they will already know who their targets are, and they'll be well down the line with pursuing them.
Yeah. So one I want to talk about, people are saying this and that. We've already said, Marty, I think you said it before, didn't you? Chelsea are leaking these names. Chelsea are leaking Kat Macario to get people hyped because, Harder and Ericsson. So we've already talked about Lopez that's come out, whether United leaked it or someone else leaked it, it doesn't matter, it's come out. Another name that has been leaked, come out. She says she's not confirmed yet, but my understanding, again, my source is not Rich, and just from what's out there as well, is that Esme Broots is coming to Manchester United. Whether it's confirmed, like I said, she's even come out and said yesterday, it's not done, I'm not signed anywhere yet. And I believe her, I don't think she has signed anywhere yet, but what I heard a couple of weeks ago was that she was the furthest along. City are there. I think Graham, again, shout out Graham, put out City, Paris Saint-Germain, and somewhere else, I think even Madrid. But for me, I think Esme is a good one. Yes, Lanzel, it's the Dutch one. And I suppose, and again, Rich, people are always also saying Chawinga, and you've interviewed her, haven't you? And I know you've interviewed Rachel. I can't even say her name. Kay, who scored the 2 goals against Barcelona. I mean, I suppose here's another name that Vix is putting out, and Katie Robinson. That's a name that I heard a while ago, months and months ago. And again, it was United and City. And I suppose with what you were saying, we're not confirmed that we're going to be in the Champions League. But if you look at us and you look at Man City, and these are your sort of, I suppose, as long as money is similar, for me, I think there's only one place you go. I don't know if you think no, if that does make a difference, but I know Bunny Shaw, for example, chose City because they she never played in a group stage with him, but she chose it on the basis that you're going to be in Champions League, and now they're worried that she could leave, on the basis of that. And I do think, us being in that title race, definitely in it, like, even here's another name James has put out, and I would go for her 100%. And yes, she will be leaving if Reading get relegated. She won't be staying there. But that's a name, Diane Rose. I'd like to see her at United. I think we can safely say here, guys, Esme Broots, Katie Robinson. I mean, there's names that we've put out, Chewinga and all that. But yeah, a winger will be coming in then, for example. Rich, what do you think about just a few of the names that we've just talked about, and where do you see it going? What do you think? Who do you think? Talk to us.
Yeah, I mean, you grow into this point now in the women's game where you get linked with every single player going, and the reality is you're not going to sign all of them. Obviously, like clubs will have lists. I think Broots is definitely a possibility in terms of Dutch players. Historically, very much favour the WSL in terms of where they come to move. There's a group of them obviously in London. There's a group of them in starting now to look at the Northwest. Obviously, Kirsten Kasparai came over last year. Potentially rumours of Van Domselaar has kind of been linked with Man City since last summer, and I think that'll probably potentially rear its head again soon. So it wouldn't shock me. I think Chavinga's an interesting one because she's an unbelievable striker, but when I spoke to her, she sort of intimated that she wanted to stay at Inter Milan and play in Italy, and that she's happy there. I don't know about the visa requirements. Obviously, Malawi are ranked incredibly lowly in the FIFA rankings. Inter haven't really made that step into the Champions League yet, so I think there's question marks from speaking to people around her in the last few months about whether she would be able to move to England. I think Kundananji would be able to. I mean, Zambia are now in the top 50. They're obviously at the World Cup. Madrid are a top half team in Spain. I think it'd be close. As far as I'm aware, and there'll be a bit about this actually in the interview when it goes out, she turned some NWSL clubs down to stay in Madrid. She's had interest from the WSL, but nothing major in terms of offers. Certainly not from a United or a City or anything like that yet. It may change because she scored 25 goals this season. She's had an unbelievable campaign. And I was talking to her agent the other day and I said, if scoring twice against Barcelona doesn't start getting your interest, then, nothing will. So I think she may be one that will be a lot. Clubs are looking at everybody. I'm sure every club's looking at her at the moment and going, okay, is it going to be worth it, the outlay? Because I think she's on a good contract in Madrid. So, yeah, Katie Robinson, another one, like you say, probably for a while now has been linked sort of solely with United and City. And I think, again, she's another one of those younger players where clubs are monitoring when's the right time to make the move, similar to sort of Laetitia last year, where it got to a point where so many clubs were kind of going for it that, United said, okay, we've got to do it now. Because if we don't do it now, you probably lose her. I have to say she's surprised me a little bit, Katie Robinson. Like, I wasn't 12 months ago, I wasn't hugely sold on her. Like, she'd gone on loan to the Championship and hadn't really ripped it up, it has to be said. And she's been excellent, to be fair, for Brighton this season. She's scoring goals, she's creating. I was really impressed when she played for England against Italy at the Arnold Clark Cup. It's an interesting one, though, because United and City are quite strong out wide. Obviously City have Hemp and Kelly, and United have got Galton, Paris, Garcia. If Bruce comes in, that's another one. So, yeah, it'll be interesting to see what happens with her in
Quick
terms of
one
that.
from that perspective. We're talking about Chewinga, we're talking about Brutz, and then we talk about Katie Robinson. Katie Robinson, like you said, has done it for Lionesses, has done it in the WSL. She's getting goals for fun now for Brighton. I mean, that goal at the weekend, it was tasty. Like, do you think that's going to have an impact with Mark? I think we know, you know, I think there's enough stats out there that say things about, and I don't think it is this, but I do think he does prefer WSL players, whether that, people then twist it and say this and that, but she can sort of come straight in a way, if you get what I mean. But, if a Chewinga came, I'm not saying that he wouldn't play her, but do you think that would have an impact? Do you think he would choose Robinson over, say, a Brutz because Robinson's done it? Or do you think, no, Brutz, there's too much quality in there that you'd have to go for it? What do you think?
I think the strategy is changing. I think I get the concept of sticking to what you know. Like, Mark has worked in the WSL and with Birmingham thrived in the WSL before. And I said on this podcast, I can't remember if it was the last time or the one before, I think it does take getting used to his style of play. It was very different to Casey's, and that's not a right or a wrong, or saying Mark's better than Casey or Casey's better than Mark. There was always going to be that adaptation period last year, and I think we saw it. The first 5-6 months, the results were there because they had individual quality, but the team weren't really gelling. There were players that didn't really look like they understood their roles, and then the second half of the season, it got better. They were just lacking that little bit of edge. So I think it was interesting that they went out, and people say, oh, he prefers English players, they prefer this. I think out of the last 10, 11 signings, I think 6 or 7 have been foreign players, and obviously now you're being linked with players like Matani Lopez, Esme Baruch, more foreign players. So, and to be fair, one of the English signings last year was probably the best signing you made in Laetitia. So I think this season, I think it was always going to be an evolution of what he did last season when it was largely an English core. Not many of those foreign players were in the squad. They were signed last summer, and I think when it takes so long to buy into that way of playing and you've worked hard at it for a year, you've had a pre-season of it, I think it was always natural that they were going to stick with that as the core because they were the players, whether they're better or not, whether they're better individual players doesn't necessarily always matter. They were better for that system. They knew his way of playing. Garcia comes in, Tunkara comes in, players like that come in. They don't. It doesn't matter if they're better. It takes time, and if they'd thrown them straight in at the start of the season and they had another sort of sticky 5-6 months where it was taking a little bit of time to adapt to his way of playing, United wouldn't be in the position they are now. I think what's going to be interesting is now what happens next. He admitted the other day the squad will have to look different. I think it'll be interesting to see how many of those foreign players make the step into the first team at the start of next season. I think Garcia is probably at the front of the queue. Ironically, I actually think Nikita Paris has done quite well the last few games. I thought she was good against Arsenal. I thought she was really lively against Man City, and I thought she was okay in the cup final as well. But I think Garcia is probably the one that's nudging at the door the most. Borisa came on obviously at the weekend as well, and at the end of the day, however good you are, you can be Lionel Messi. If you don't fit into your manager's system, you're not going to play. So I don't think it's ever a case of, well, I see the comments about people saying he prefers English players. I think he does. I don't think it's because they're his favourites or anything like that. I think it's because they're the ones that know his system and the ones that can win games. And I said to you at the start of the season that when we did the podcast, I said the proof will be in the pudding at the end of the season. And he's probably justified most of the decisions. That doesn't mean he's got everything right. There's probably times where they could have made different decisions, different subs, made wrong choices. That's management. It happens. But I think it'll be interesting to see what happens next because there is a clear strategy where a lot of the recruitment over the last 12 months, including January, obviously with Jade Riviere, Lisa Nelson, Cascarino, whatever happens with her, and now obviously the links to Spanish players, Dutch players. I think it's clear that they're looking beyond of that. They're looking to enhance that style of play, and they'll come in and they've got to grasp that opportunity. But at the end of the day, what they've done so far has worked. So,
listen, you talked about Messi there. If you can't fit a Messi style player into your team, then you're a bad manager. Not Messi not fitting. Let's be
a
serious. And
hypothetical situation, you
yeah,
get.
but like for example, if he was to get a player like, God, I don't know who was a Messi, but for example, Melly, the Haitian girl, apparently we were linked to her, and that's that level. So we've seen with Maya, she is it can always improve, but like for example, Jade is sort of sitting there, but Jade, when she came on for Hannah, and I found that very interesting. I wasn't expecting that, but that's the fullback position that I do expect, Honor and Jade. But let's see. Lanzel's got a question. Thoughts on head of recruitment? I know you asked him, and he said that that's coming in, and it's very interesting. And I mean, when it was first rumored this, there was going to be like scouts and all this. I heard people saying, "Well, isn't that his job?" But at the same time, I do think there is this, and I do think there is an element of Polly's job is too big. Head of women's football, but there's commercial, there's this, there's that, there's planning Old Trafford, there's the pathway for the girls, and then you need someone good to. I'm not saying Polly doesn't know, but you need a good. I think City have got it right, and they've got a football with the Nielsen, and they've got like another guy called, I don't know his name, but he does that side. And I do think there needs to be two roles. Um, before in the Euros, I spoke to someone who said that it's too big a role, and I think that's what's come out of it. And I feel like that's what head of recruitment. And I mean, Sam Devil has said Wolfsburg sporting director. But is there anyone else that you know? And what's your overall thoughts on that position and sort of what I just said?
I think it'd be a good move for whoever they bring in. Obviously, they're taking it serious. I think you're right in that. I think Polly is very good at what she does, but it's very different at a club like Manchester United in terms of the overall demands of the role. I think you do need to split things between different people. So, and that's all. Look, that's not something you just do in one moment. You click your fingers and everyone's there. It takes time, and United are still building that structure off the pitch because they've only been in the WSL for 4 years. So, yeah, I think a head of recruitment's interesting because it adds another sort of dimension to the system, similar to what you said with Nils. Nils will be involved with recruitment at Man City, and he will have his say, and that adds another dimension to on top of Gareth Taylor and Gavin Makel and Karen Bardsley and others that are involved in those decisions. So I haven't heard any names because obviously Mark only kind of dropped it on us the other night, and it was sort of very casually dropped in towards the end of his post match. Yeah, I think it's a good sign though for United because it's just always another sign that they're taking it
Yeah,
a bit more seriously. So yeah, I think it'll be a
no,
good move. I think
definitely.
I don't know who it's going to be at this point. Yeah, there's a lot of people out there. I mean, it's it's
You
been
know who
more
I would love it
affordable.
to be? Willie Kirk is a good guy, you know, and he's picked up good signings. I'm not saying it will be him because obviously he's the Leicester manager, but he's a good guy, and I won't be upset if it was him. So that's
I
just
think you, I think
my
you've
two
fallen
pence.
out with him.
I'm not falling out of him. I love him. Well, I don't love him. Love is too far, but I've not fallen out with him. He knows that.
Okay.
Here, I just want to touch on this very quickly. Mary Earps, everyone who they want to keep. I think he even said it with Vilda. If they have an option in their contract, I cannot see Man United letting them go. I mean, I've saw up before people are talking about Hansen. And I mean, what do you think now, Rich? I suppose with this, if they do want to sell a player, but that player is under contract, like a Kirsty Hansen, can you see them asking now for big money? Do you think this is the way it's going? That's the way we obviously want it to go. But can you see, people paying for maybe a Thomas? I'm not saying these players, but a Hansen, this kind of thing. Can you see like, I suppose, a Brighton playing for players, a Villa playing for players? We know that Spurs have just paid, but that's what is going to grow the game, isn't it? When we've got a player, we need to sell them. That's how you make money, That's how it should work, And what do you think about, I suppose, the whole pyramid, and then now paying?
Yeah, I mean, I think more clubs are obviously. Aston Villa are paying. They paid a fee for Jordan in January. They paid a fee for Rachel Daly. Tottenham obviously paid a big fee for Beth England, and I think there was some add-ons in it as well. So yeah, clubs are. Brighton, I think, are, but probably not to the same extent. West Ham a little bit. Obviously, I think it's a bit more of a struggle. Obviously, the further down the table you get, and that's reflected in how the table looks. But yeah, I think Hansen. I mean, I'd keep her personally, but if Aston Villa come and make a big bid, and you've got your Garcia and you've got your Galtons, and if you get Esme Barutz or you get Katie Robinson, then maybe they will take the money if it was a good offer. But I think she does have something to offer to Man United, and at the end of the day, she's already there. So do you want to go and pay big-ish money for Katie Robinson, or do you want to keep the player that you've already got? That'll be down to United. It's sort of similar with the goalkeeping situation. Do you just stick with Sophie Bagley and cut Emily Ramsey loose, or do you bring Emily Ramsey back and let Sophie Bagley go? So there's all those decisions to be made. They'll be making them. Yeah, I think clubs will be bidding. I think Kirsty Hansen, she's nominated for Player of the Year. That's how good a season she's been. And I know some people weren't happy she got loaned out, but it's worked out well because United haven't missed her. That's not being disrespectful, but they haven't in terms of the depth that they've got and the season they've had. It's really worked out for Kirsty because she's had an unbelievable season. Best case scenario for United, she comes back and she does really well. And if they sell her, they get money. So, yeah, I think if they are looking to sell players, whether that's her, whether that's Martha Thomas, whoever, I think there's clubs now. I think most WSL clubs would put money forward, some more than others. Some it might only be a few tens of thousands. Some it may be, like you say, into the hundreds. So, yeah, I think it'd be interesting. Like I said, my personal opinion, if I was at United, is I'd keep Kirsty Hampton around, but I'm not the head of recruitment. So I think the ruthless truth of it is obviously if you can always go and find somebody that you think's better, you're going to go and find somebody that you think's better. That's what's going to take United forward. If they don't think they can get something better than Kirsty Hansen, they'll probably keep her. If they think they can go out there and get someone that is better, then why not take the money and let her go and play every week at Aston Villa or whoever else might want her? That's a hypothetical, but yeah, I think WSL clubs now are definitely putting more money about, and I think that'll keep improving every summer. I think it's interesting to see how much they do put into it, where their motivations are. Like obviously, it's hard now for your Evertons, your West Hams, your Tottenhams, your Liverpools, etc. to get the Champions League. Like there's 4 teams really fighting for 3 places. There's no Europa League. There's no Conference League. There aren't tens of millions of pounds between 9th and 8th like there is in the Premier League. So maybe the question might be where's the motivation for these clubs to keep throwing money at it. But I do get the feeling for now that some are going to keep doing that. So yeah, I think there'll be money spent definitely. But at the end of the day, it's up to United to decide who they want to sell and who they don't, and I think they'll probably have a pretty good idea of that by now.
Yeah, 100%. I agree with you. I mean, Lanzell's dropped this in question, and I suppose question to everyone who's watching: where do you think that we'll strengthen? And I mean, I want to say it as everyone's staying, and if everyone's staying, I would still like to see a forward come in. I mean, I'd still keep Russo, but I would definitely put. I mean, I'm seeing Natasha saying midfield, but I think we've talked about Natasha. That Lopez is what from what we're hearing done deal. And like I said, we're hearing Brutz as a player that's coming in on the wing, and this is the level that we want to be at. And I mean, for forward, I mean, we have talked about Chewinga and we talked about I'm not good at her surname, Rachel. But I mean, who do you think? Who do you think that Man United could? Because I've seen people say Diani. She's out of contract, but apparently there's talk that she might sign for Paris, a new deal. Katoto, is she going to sign it? But that's what I would love. I would love a Katoto. I would love a Diani. I would love that, killer 15, 20 goals. But I mean, even I think we've seen with Rach Daly and Big Up Niall, I just want to say thank you. I think even with that, I mean, this, from what Vicky's put, it doesn't move me. It doesn't move me in the way that the first two names that I've talked about have moved. People are saying now, Lanzell, give me Wiedema. We know that she's, I think, got one year left. But, Natasha, she'll stay at United. She's got an ACL. Give her the money. Oh, Emma Watson, that's a name that we have heard that we've got first dibs on. So yeah, we'll get on to that now. But listen, who do you think is the 15, 20 goal a season killer for Man United? Drop a name, Rich. Doesn't mean it's happening, it just means you'd like to see them and they're reasonable.
I mean, I don't think it'll be Miedema. I think it'd be a hell of a move if they pulled it off. But like you say, she's out with an ACL anyway, and even though Arsenal don't announce contract lengths, I don't believe she's out of contract this summer. I think she's got at least a year left. So, yeah, don't think Arsenal are going to be selling, and I don't think United will be paying the money that it would take to get her. In terms of overall, it's a really tough one because you look at the team this season, and there's not an obvious weakness. You don't point anybody out and go, they've had a dreadful season because they're second in the league and they got to the cup final. Everyone's played their part in that in terms of that regular starting 11. But the other flip side of it is if you want to be absolutely brutal about it, if you want to go and get to where Chelsea are or Barcelona are, probably every single player, bar maybe one or two, is replaceable in terms of there's players out there better than the ones you have. But, every football club in the world can say that, probably apart from maybe one or two. So it's the reality of what you can actually get. I think, like you say, goalkeeper Mary Earps is doing well. Your fullbacks, whether that's Badje, obviously you've got Jay Riviere in there, that's a really talented young kid. I was sceptical about whether Millie Turner would step up, but she's done really well in that partnership with Letitia. But again, if you want to be brutal, you'll say there's better centre backs out there in the world than Millie Turner, and it's what level you want to get to. There's better midfielders out there than Hayley Ladd, even though she's doing a very good job. There's better midfielders than Katie Zellum, even though she's doing a good job. There's probably better wingers than Nikita Paris and Leah Galton, but they're doing good jobs. So clubs are only ever going to sign a player that they think can come in and be better than what they have. And maybe there's some already in that squad that they're going to bed in, like your Nelsons and like your Garcias. I think they do, yeah. I think a striker, like I said, I think if you're playing, I think you look at the Golden Boot winners over the last few years. Obviously, Rachel Daly's now in the 20s. She's played for a mid-table side. Sam Kerr, the last two seasons, I think had 21 and 22 goals. Miedema, when she was winning the Golden Boot, was above 20 goals. And I think if you're even Man City, they're not going to get Champions League, but their starting striker is very close to that mark of 20 goals this season. So, like I said at the start, I think Russo brings a lot of different attributes that a lot of strikers don't. But I think if you want to win the league and you want to compete in Europe, you've got to have a striker that is getting at least 15, up towards 20. In terms of realistic targets, I always look at younger players. I think ones that are going to develop, and I think that is something United have been very good at. I think Chavinga would be a great signing. I'm sceptical as to whether it would happen from a, like I said, speaking to her, knowing that she's happy in Italy and the visa issues. There was the girl Piemonte at AC Milan that was linked. There's Fenna Kalmer at FC 20, a young Dutch striker. She's been scoring ridiculous amounts of goals in the Dutch league, and I think she's had some interest, but I could see her potentially making a sort of maybe a move up the ladder and then a big club rather than straight to a big club. But I think she'll possibly be a name that's on a lot of people's radars. There was someone else I was going to mention, but I can't remember who. But yeah, I think I would always look at younger players that you can develop that have energy. Kundananji again, another one, has had a great season, but is on a good contract in Madrid. So yeah, look, you got to do your scouting work. You've got to do what you need to do. I think, well, if I was Man United, I think Rachel Daly, I think Beth England would score 20 goals in the Man United team. I don't think that's what will happen. I don't think that'll be the kind of target they go for. But you want someone that's going to put the ball in the back of the net every week, and I think strikers is, and it's not being disrespectful, but I think strikers is almost the easiest role to go and buy because they're so prominent. That's what everyone sees. They're the players that win the awards, rightly or wrongly, because they score the goals. And at the end of the day, if you can find a player that's going to put the ball, when Bunny Shaw came into Man City, I did a podcast at the start of the season with The Athletic, and they said who's going to be the Golden Boot winner. Some people said Sam Kerr, some people said Miedemar. I said Bunny Shaw, and I said I don't think Man City will win the league, but she's a good striker. She's got great service. Chloe Kelly on the right, Lauren Hemp on the left. Your Hasegawas and people like that in midfield. She'll score for fun. You can give her the service, and United have got that with their wingers. Wingers that will create and midfielders that will create, and they create from set pieces. If you've got a striker in there that knows how to put the ball in the back of the net, in the WSL you should be pushing 15, 20 goals. So I think if you were asking me where I would go and improve, I would get a number 9 that, if Russo stays, that complements her in terms of different attributes, and if she goes, someone to replicate those goals.
Killer Lanzell said 15, 20 goals, that's what we want, a killer. Listen, I'm seeing people talking about, well, you've just talked about him, Daly in England, and this is a question. Have we missed out on both of them? I know Daly, there was links there last year, and people are saying Ashwala now. Should Man United have gone for those two? One of those two?
Look, it's easy to say in hindsight. Was there interest in Daly? I never heard anything major, to be honest. There was definite stories a few years ago about Beth England. I think that was before Mark was there. I think it was when Casey was the head coach that United wanted to sign her from Chelsea, but at that point weren't offering the money that Chelsea wanted. I think there was definitely truth in that rumour from speaking to people who would have known, but that's at least a couple of years ago now. And obviously by the time it got to the point that she was moving on in January, United had obviously strengthened and had a very different squad, and obviously we're building the attack around Alessia Russo. So I don't think it was probably worth it for United to go out and spend £250,000 on a player that wasn't an absolute needs must, whereas it was for Tottenham. And at the end of the day, they justified it because I think without her, there's a very good chance that they might have got relegated. So yeah, I don't know about Daly. I mean, I'd look at her. I would. I mean, look, Villa are not going to buckle and sell her for anything. I think, even if I'm being honest, if I was Man City, if I was Arsenal, I'd probably be looking at Rachel Daly at the moment. Because I think obviously the striker situation is still going to be there for Arsenal this summer as well, with Miedemar and Mead still out. So yeah, I don't think they missed the boat. I think there was definite interest in Beth England a couple of years ago, but that ship has sailed. Whether they look at her now, that obviously would be a step up from Tottenham. But again, like I said, I think if I'm a big club, I'm looking at a younger striker that you can we can develop and mould over the next couple of years.
No, and Antonio's just put something, and this is what I was thinking. This is the question I was going to go down. Why can't we just do this? I mean, for me, as like I said to you, I think she's got 1 year left. I think her contract's up next summer. They're not in Champions League. This is the reason why she came to Man City. I'm hearing there's issues with Taylor. Maybe I don't know if there is. It's sorted now, but I mean, she won't be happy. She came here to win trophies, yeah. And I can't remember if she has won an FA Cup. I can't remember, but I mean, Catherine did a piece. It is basically chalk and cheese. I do, they're going in the right way with investment and stuff. Vicky's saying they'd be mad to sell to us. Of course they would, but we're talking about investment and we're talking about, killer strikers that we need to go and win the Champions League. Bunny came because she had ambitions. Are City matching her ambitions? I'd say no. I would just, it's Bunny is a striker that I've known since 2018 when she was in college, and then she did the 19 World Cup, and that was one that I was pushing, wasn't I, Rich? I was saying her name, and I know that Martin went to watch her. That's how much I was pushing and digging and hearing things about what was happening. Finding Jamaican relatives to go and ask someone. That's how much I rate Bunny. Yeah. What do you think?
I think if Man City sold it to Man United, I'd eat my hat, to be honest with you. I mean, look, in a year's time, when she's a free agent, if she stays at Man City this summer and decides not to sign a new contract, then yeah, but everyone's going to be after it. If she runs down a contract and she's a free agent next year, every club in the world, and you're probably talking even your Lyons, your Barcelonas are going to be looking at Bunny Shaw. So yeah, I mean, look, it's the kind of player United should be targeting, but they should have been targeting her and putting the money up before she went to Man City. That was the chance because she was at Bordeaux and anything was a step up. In terms of that, Man City won the race, and look, things happen. You miss out on Champions League. I'm sure these players have certain clauses in their contracts in terms of fees they can go for if they don't get Champions League football. But City aren't going to sell directly to United, so I don't think they'll sell full stop, to be honest with you, unless you get to a sort of Kira Wolf situation where a club's throwing silly money around. I don't think that will happen, so I can't see it. Yeah, it's the kind of talent they should be looking at, yeah, but I don't think that's... I think you want to be going and finding the next Bunny Shaw, the player that is at those kind of clubs that are third, fourth, fifth in their leagues and probably outperforming their team like she was, where she was the top scorer in France playing for Bordeaux, and she was outscoring Katoto, she was outscoring Hegerberg, she was outscoring Diani, playing for a team, and that's probably what teams are now looking at with Rachel Daly, going, wow, she's playing for Aston Villa, and she's outscored Man United's players, City's players, Arsenal's players, Chelsea's players, like Chavinga's done for Inter Milan, she's outscored Juventus players and Roma players, so yeah, that kind of talent, but I think you're probably now trying to look at, well, who's the next Bunny Shaw rather than probably actually Bunny Shaw.
Well, Eva Payot, have I said it right, from Wolfsburg? I think we know Pop and these players are the big ones, but she's one that's maybe scored a lot in the Champions League, or do you think, no, that's a player that's out of Man United's league?
I think it's probably a player that's out of Man United's league at the moment. I think she's got a contract until 2025 as well. So, yeah, to get a player like her out of a team like Wolfsburg that's in the Champions League final, she's sort of their prized asset, and she's got 2 years left on her contract. I think that's a very difficult one. Like I said, I think for me, I'm looking at your next. Who's your next big thing? Because that's the reality of where United are at. If there's a Sam Kerr out there, they can't sign a Sam Kerr, but can they sign the next Sam Kerr? Can they sign the next Bunny Shaw? Can they mould that? And like I said, the other one that I was thinking of was Alba Redondo at Levante.
Yes.
As the top scorer in the champ. And she's one where, and it's not to disrespect Levante, but they're not the biggest club in the world, and maybe she'll end up going to a big Spanish club. She may end up going to Real Madrid. She may end up going to Barcelona. But if I'm Man United, if I'm Arsenal, if I'm Roma, if I'm Wolfsburg, if I'm Bayern Munich, if I'm anyone, I'm looking at her and going, okay, wow, she's got 27 goals in the league this season. She's 6 ahead of Oshuala. She's miles ahead of the next Barcelona player or the next Real Madrid player. Like, that's the kind of player that you're going for, because Chelsea aren't going to go for it because they've got Sam Kerr. Lyon aren't because they've got Hegerberg. So the top clubs probably aren't going to look at that player. So your next slight level down, Man United's, your Arsenal's, your Cities, the teams that are not quite winning the trophies but are there or thereabouts and looking for a striker, I'm looking at someone like her. I'm looking at, she's not a younger player necessarily, but someone that's had a good season, someone that has been banging goals in. That's the kind of level you're looking at where you can match a player that's at your level with the level that you're at. And yeah, the top clubs aren't going to look at her because they've got their strikers. They're done and dusted. So for me, if you're United, you can't go and sign Sam Kerr. You can't really go and sign Eva Pio. You probably can't go and sign Katoto, Hegerberg, Bunny Shaw, people like that. But can you get someone slightly lesser known? Can you get an Alba Redondo? Can you get a Kundananzi? Can you get a Chevinga? Can you get a Fenakalma? People like that. So, yeah, that's what I'd be looking at. Again, I'm not United's head of recruitment, so I don't know, but that's the level I'd be looking at.
I saw a name before, and I'm trying to find it, but it was from Niall, who came on before, and he said Emma Watson. That's one that I did hear was done as well. And it seems like, I don't know, this is how I feel, Rich, and guys, jump in and tell us if you know different. But I feel like they're doing a recruitment of young players. So, your Grace, obviously Maya stepped up straight away. Evie, who came in, now this Emma's linked. And they're sort of going to be for like the future. I think Grace came into the here you go, Niall. Thoughts on Emma Watson? Grace came into the championship straight away, and he's saying he might do the same with Evie. Might give her 6 months and then loan her out. I'm sure if Emma came, whether she would come back in. Carrie Jones. For me, I don't know. Is she going to come back? Is that the striker? We're talking about next level. Does she need another loan? Fuso is a name that I'd watch. Lanzell saying he doesn't want to buy her to loan her. Then obviously Carrie Jones and he's going to sign a 1 year extension. Listen. Let's leave that for a bit. What do you think? What do you think about the young level of players that they are signing? Because it's like they've got a young squad and then a senior squad. It is like that. And obviously we have that, but these like Grace is better than the 21s. She's probably even better than the Championship. But is she going to work into a Man United team, or could she? For me, if Tooney and that come back late, could you have Grace and Vilda there? I don't. What do you think of your Emma Watsons, your Grace, your Carrie Jones?
Yeah, I like what they do with that because, like I said, the younger players, they're going to be the ones that you can develop and that you can mould. And they have to be talented enough, of course, but that's what Man United have had a history of doing. And, I'm a massive fan of Grace Clinton. I really am. And there is that reality still of the stronger that you get, the more players that you sign, it's harder for your young players to come through. Fans always say they want to see their young players, but they also say they want to see the top signings, and the two don't really kind of go together because fans will say, well, I want to see Grace Clinton play, but then Man United went and signed a world-class number 10, they'd be just as excited about that, and then that means Grace Clinton's not going to play. So, yeah, it's interesting, and you have to have that strategy, and United had that, where they were sort of slow with Grace Clinton. They managed a few knocks that she had. They loaned her out. It was a good loan for her. It worked out. Same with Kirsty Hansen. People questioned it, but it really worked out in terms of loaning her to Aston Villa. And I think Emma will be one of those that comes in, and what they do with her, I don't know. I'm actually doing a profile on her at the moment. I've been speaking to some of her coaches up in Scotland that have coached her since she was sort of 7, 8 years old, and they've only got good things to say about her, but not just her talent, but her character as well, her attitude, and I'm really. I've only watched bits of her. I watched her for Scotland last month, and I was really. She reminded me a little bit of when I watch Erin Cuthbert play for Chelsea in Scotland. She has that drive to get forward, and Erin's a similar signing. She joined Chelsea sort of a bit of an unknown, was a kid, and look at her now. She's as important for Chelsea as anybody. So I think if you have the right plan, look, it takes time. It always takes time. No kid is going to go into a top side and play straight away. And I remember when I think it was when Neve Charles signed for Chelsea, a bit out of the blue, and people sort of said, why? What are they doing? She's just going to sit on the bench. She'd not really set the world alight at Liverpool. But look at her now. She's starting most games for Chelsea, and it's taken 3, 4, 5 years, for her to get to that point. So look, things don't happen overnight. You don't sign a Grace Clinton and she's going to go start every week, or you sign an Emma Watson at 17 and she's going to start every week. She might not start regularly for 2, 3, 4 years. But I like the plan. I like the plan to go out and get the top young players because, like I said, that's what teams like United have to do now. They can't go and sign the best centre back in the world, the best attacking midfielder in the world. So, can they find the best young ones and develop them into it? And I think Emma Watson, from what I've seen and what I've heard, is somebody that potentially fits into that category quite nicely.
And just, I suppose, to wrap it all up, we're talking about youth. Hearn, Barry Simpson, etc. Listen, I'm hearing good things. Richard, you want to add anything about these kind of names?
No, I don't know at the minute. In terms of loans and things like that, I know there's loans being discussed our end, but yeah, I don't know. I think obviously we're waiting for a few things to be confirmed here. Obviously, in regards to our takeover and what things look a bit like for our women this season. So yeah, hopefully once that's
What would
sorted.
a championship side like Sheffield, or even well, Bristol weren't, but the ones that were around there, Charlton. I suppose you're our most local-ish one, other than Blackburn. Would you be interested in a lot of these dev players, or not as much, or so?
I think our manager obviously knows a couple of them well from Burnley, and I think I said last year that was probably the intention when they sent them to various National League teams, like Burnley, like Derby County, that they'd probably get them that first team experience and then maybe try and place them in the Championship, whether that's a Sheffield United, whether that's a Blackburn Rovers, whoever. Obviously, there was a couple at Blackburn this year. We didn't have anyone. I think the last one we had was Tara. So yeah, I think you need to make that step up. You're not going to play for Man United this season. Realistically, you might get a couple of minutes in the cup, but you're not going to get regular first team football if you're a Kira Barry and Alicia Ahern, Jess Simpson, whoever else. So yeah, I think that's where they'll be looking. Teams in the Championship have to obviously be convinced that they can come in and make an impact. It's not always easy. It's a tough league. Like, it's getting more and more competitive. It's physical as well, which is sometimes tough for younger players that are sort of just used to academy football. But yeah, look, young players can thrive. Lucy Watson thrived with us in the Championship and went to Chelsea. Mia Enderby's thrived with us, and hopefully we can keep hold of her. There's lots of young players thriving in the Championship, so you can definitely do it if you've got the talent. And they need to develop. They need to develop, and I think playing Championship football, probably for those kids now that have sort of done the academy stuff, will develop them better than another season playing, under 21s football.
Yeah. I think we've worked through it, guys. I don't, if there's any other names that you want me to touch on, to hit them in now. But we've said, people can question me, but as far as I'm aware, myself, I mean, what do you think, Rich? Martin, I don't even know how I say her name. Martina Lopez, number 6, plays for Atletico Madrid, Manchester United next season. Watch that one. I think Esme Brutz, I do think, she's come out and said nothing's done, but that would be a one that I can definitely see. And then other than that, it's like you said, Piemonte. That's one I've heard as well. I don't, I think it depends on your Russos and well, Honor. We know wants to stay no matter what, but You know, I mean, is there anything that you think, Rich, that, you know, in terms of, I suppose, those three names that I've said, but any other names, or, you know, do you think those three are good for United so far? Your Martina, your Brutz, and your Piemonte, if that was it.
Yeah, I think that's the kind of sort of level you're going to be looking at. Like you say again, sort of younger players like a Piemonte or a Boots or whoever. Obviously, my ton's a bit more experienced. She's 28. But again, like I said at the start, sort of those Spanish players, they bring a different kind of dynamic, especially to a midfield. They're always incredibly technically gifted players, very possession based. And like I said, she was definitely a target at one point under Casey. So yeah, she's out of contract at Atletico. I'll try and obviously find out what I can about her. Spanish clubs, like English clubs, are not always the best for leaks. So yeah, hopefully clubs get a little bit better at leaking things this summer because it'll make our lives a little bit easier.
Yeah, no worries, guys. Thank you for continuing to watch. Drop a like on this video. If there's more things that you want us to do, let us know. But I think it'll be a good window for us, and I think I expect to see good players coming in, and I expect we'll be happy, hopefully, this window. But listen, guys, take care.
You guys
Thank
are
you, Rich.
never happy. You guys are never happy.
Rich, do you want to shout out where they can find your stuff and your Substack or anything?
Yeah, I'm also on Twitter. Obviously, Rich J Laverty, my Substack, and everything's in my profile. And yeah, there will be a nice profile on Emma Watson on there in the next week or so. So yeah, subscribe.
There you go. Yeah, if that's not a between the lines, guys, then that's not between the lines. But anyway, listen, thank you so much. Take care. Have a good evening, guys.